welcome to Alliance Insights, produced by the Risk and Insurance Research Academy. I'm Noel Codispoti with John Barbagalo, strategic advisor with Samba Safety, and we're here to have yet another conversation about the driver risk report. Hi, John.
Hi, Noel. It's great to be
How
with
are
you.
you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Always good to
Great.
speak with you.
Yeah, you too. It's been some time, I think a little over a year, maybe a little under a year.
Yeah.
So super excited for our audience to be able to hear from you all again and see what Samba is recently produced and is working on. I wanted to kick it off by asking you to share a little bit about your career, how you got into the industry, and certainly how you got engaged with Samba Safety. I'm sure there's a decent number of our audience who has our last podcast just playing on repeat every time you turn on their podcast platform. But for those that haven't or maybe forget, why don't you kick us off by sharing a little bit?
Sure. Happy to do that. And, I connected with Samba Safety just through really good fortune. I spent 39 years in the property and casualty insurance business, working almost exclusively with personal auto and then commercial auto risk. And then I retired. I retired in 2022. And after a little while of retirement, I was looking to get involved with an organization that I thought could benefit from my insurance experience, but not an insurance company. And I was fortunate enough to find Samba Safety, which is a cloud-based risk management solutions provider. They work with over 15,000 organizations that deal with mobility risk. And I've been doing that for a long time, 25 years of serving, commercial fleets and others like that. But there's a real opportunity for them also to connect with the insurance industry, who also deal with that risk. So it was a good match for me. It's a young company it's a mission-driven company with enthusiastic people that revere data, which is something I'm all about. So I've been doing it for about 2 years now, and it's been great.
Oh, fantastic. I think I love that about insurance professionals is everyone seems to retire, but retirement is, I think, like one trip to the beach and then everybody's right back in it in another way. It's an industry that can't keep people away for too long because it's exciting and there's always something changing.
Yeah.
I would, I've had a chance to work with the folks at Samba, not in the same level of detail that you have for about 18 months. And I agree about the people and the mission. So it's, we've had a really great time engaging with the folks. What do you think makes their approach different than others in this space or working in other types of data-driven companies?
Yeah, and that's a good question because there are a lot of different data providers out there. But Samba's, like I said, they're mission-driven. They're really all about safety. They've been doing it for 25 years with that focus. And I think, and they do it across 50 states. And, they have modern technology that's relatively easy to integrate with. But they're very, mission focused on safety and customer focused on providing data that's usable and of high quality and easy to ingest and put to work. And it's a holistic solution. So they're not only looking at kind of one type of data. They're constantly kind of expanding where they go to develop data-based insights. Like I said, it's mission-driven, so I think that kind of takes them where the opportunity is.
Yeah, for sure. I think this year, well, in many years, there's been, no shortage of headlines about risk and safety across the industry, from litigation to labor shortages. And what I really like about these reports is how they don't just present data, but connect the dots, right? Whether it's between, behavior, technology, and certainly outcomes. But before we dive into the reports, how are you thinking about the state of driver safety and risk in the industry today?
Well, in a lot of ways, we're at a tipping point. And not that operators haven't been concerned with safety before. They certainly have been. And insurers also have, been thinking about how do we kind of reduce accidents and things of that nature. But now it's really become an imperative. The costs continue to rise faster than inflation. The economic costs. There's labor force issues, driver retention issues. It's an aging driver population. You have a shifting regulatory environment. You have a lot going on, and it's really challenging, in some cases, the economic viability of the operators. And if not challenging their viability, it is stressing them. It's a major stressor on the businesses today. So I think we're at a tipping point where collectively we need to figure out, how do we make our roads safer? How do we reduce the number of accidents we're seeing and the severity of those accidents?
So, taking that into consideration, what are the biggest forces shaping, fleet safety for this year and beyond?
Yeah. So, well, to me, one of the biggest positive forces is the adoption of telematics, right? So using that technology to, in near real time, be able to assess driver behavior on the road. And, that's a number of different types of data, including visual data from cameras and things like that. So that's a positive factor that I think we're just really beginning to leverage to improve safety. There's also some negative forces out there, and you mentioned litigation, and that's a big one. Litigation funding is driving some really, really large jury awards. It's, putting pressure on businesses and insurance companies. Escalating costs beyond that, repair costs are going up. Vehicles are more expensive to repair because they have a lot more technology. In some ways, they're a lot safer, but when there is a collision, it's costly to repair. We don't know what the impact of tariffs will be. It's not really in the economic data yet, but I suspect that will bring additional pressure on repair costs and things of that nature. So there's a lot of forces out there that, like I said, are creating this tipping point where we really need to get serious about improving safety and making the investments necessary.
Well, it's interesting because I think that, those comments related to litigation and jury awards and whatnot, you could cut that excerpt from this audio or video and lay it into almost every layer of or every segment of insurance at this point. And it's kind of really a shame that is a topic of conversation across the board.
Yeah.
One thing that stood out to me was kind of the clear, connection between behavioral patterns that can forecast future outcomes. What surprised you most about this year's driver risk report?
Noel, I wouldn't say anything really surprised me. Maybe I'm at a stage of life where I don't get surprised that easily anymore. But one thing I was pleased to see that was kind of affirming is that for companies that are monitoring driving performance, they are actually seeing a reduction in serious injuries and kind of average payments. We've known for a while that if you monitor, you'll see a reduction in violations. And we know violations correlate to future accidents. But in this year's report, we could actually share data that shows the severity of injuries and fatalities are being reduced if you monitor.
I remember us talking about this last year a little bit, and it was about the time that I had downloaded an app for my children so I can monitor their whereabouts. And that particular app gives me a report about cell phone usage while driving. And I think even from a personal standpoint, the monitoring of a certain teenager in my house has reduced perhaps the number of times he may be distracted along the road. And I can certainly say from my own perspective, knowing that my children can see my own behavior, monitoring from my children to me is certainly impactful. Which is, probably good as a mom, but also good as a employer for the fleets and in commercial space. The report also says that risk isn't random, but predictable. I think as a former actuarial student, I can attest to that, that sentiment. Yeah. So what kind of behaviors are most indicative of future accidents?
Well, let me first follow up on your comment about monitoring cell phone usage, because we know that just the simple act of monitoring does have an effect. And whether it's a mom monitoring her children or an operator of a commercial fleet monitoring their drivers, it does change behavior. But to really kind of change behavior, you kind of need the follow-up. You have the information. What do you do with the information? And as a mom, if you're kind of letting your children know what you're seeing, that and kind of how they should maybe change their behavior, that helps. And in a commercial setting, that's even more powerful to kind of follow up with the appropriate guidance and training to kind of do better going forward. So
is it because I will still love my kids and let them live in my house, but a employer may not allow that employee to continue working in that job?
Well, yeah, I think, what we certainly encourage at Samba Safety is to train. It's like, let's identify the behavior, let's discuss why it's riskier, and then let's try to address it through training. Now, at some point you might have to take a different action, right? But back to the randomness. In any universe of risk, there is a randomness, right? That the whole concept of insurance is kind of based on that. You pool risk, you spread the cost across the population so nobody's exposed to a catastrophic loss. But within that population of risk, there are certainly concentrations of risk. There are high risk areas and there are lower risk areas. And the data that we're able to assess today, and the data that Samba Safety kind of brings to the table, allows you to identify those areas of concentrated risk and the behaviors, and we'll talk about the behaviors in a minute, that cause it. And then when you know where they are, you can take action. And that to me is the real change that we're on the precipice of being able to see the risk and deal with it before the losses happen. So, you mentioned distracted driving, still a major cause of problems. Additionally, speeding. We went into COVID, accident frequency went down, miles driven went down, but people really started to speed, and they continue to speed coming out of COVID. Excuse me. And we've seen, and it will be in the report, for like the fourth year in a row, as we monitor violations, speeding has increased as a percentage of total violations. It's about 40% of all violations now are speeding. So speeding and distracted driving are two big ones. And you can identify those and you can address them. And hopefully you can address them before they lead to losses and serious losses.
So, and that's part, of that training process or the monitoring. What is the behavior of the fleet?
So again, what we do at Samba Safety is we look at lots of data. We look at motor vehicle records. We look at court data. We look at CSA, compliance, safety, and administration data from the FMCSA. And we look at telematics data if we can ingest that. And we also look at loss history for clients that will share that with us. And by taking a holistic view and kind of seeing those behaviors and how they correlate to accidents, you can develop action plans and you can train. Excuse me.
From an insurer's perspective, or as you look at insurers, are they doing enough in this space, or is it policy or technology? What works better?
Yeah, and the short answer is no, not as much as they can be doing, in my opinion. That's not to be critical of the insurance industry. They have certainly been aware of the opportunity to manage risk better, to provide instruction on loss, how to control losses, how to avoid losses. But what we have now is a proliferation of much more newer, more predictive data than we've ever had, and kind of harnessing that and sharing and collaborating with the people they insure they can do more to drive accident frequency down, in my opinion. So, I think we're on the precipice of that. There's a lot of interest in it. The company, results for commercial auto insurers have not been good for a number of years. The few companies that really kind of focus on commercial auto insurance as a line of business have outperformed the others. And they've outperformed the others because I believe they're focused on data and executing on that data. So I think we're going to see more and more of that.
Well, I think too, as someone who has not underwritten, commercial auto, but is, a purchaser of personal auto policies, any steps we take in this commercial space truly impacts the personal side as well. We're not splitting highways with commercial policies versus personal policies. And so the individual underwriters or insurance company personnel are also impacted by our ability to make an impact from a commercial insurance perspective. I would,
For sure. And, it's foundational to our economy, that commercial vehicles are out on the roads doing what they need to do across a variety of industries. And yes, if we can improve the safety performance in that space, everyone benefits from that for sure. And, when you start to look at vehicle types and kind of, heavier classifications of vehicles, they tend to lead to more severe accidents as well. So it's not just reducing the total number of accidents, but hopefully reducing the severity and human cost and economic cost of those accidents.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, being part of the larger economy. In the beginning of this segment, you mentioned the increased cost of repairs, and certainly, inflationary pressure on vehicle technology can be a real curveball depending on the day of the week, or just in general what we're using to put into cars. So how is that reshaping the way insurers are thinking about profitability or premiums?
Well, again, look, to have a sustainable insurance market that operators can rely on being there for them, insurance companies need to earn an underwriting profit, right? And they're not. So that has to be addressed from their point of view, but it can't just continue. I shouldn't say continue, but it can't be a cost plus business. They can't just say costs are up, premiums are going up. There is a breaking point. And I think for a lot of businesses, we're kind of at that breaking point. Like they just can't absorb the premium increases, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really an insurer's best interest to kind of get at the root cause, the cost drivers behind what's going on. And again, not all of that is controllable. We talked about litigation costs and funded litigation. That's probably going to continue unless we get serious tort reform. But there is a lot that can be done to just reduce the total number of accidents. And if we reduce the total number of accidents, that will bring costs down. So I think insurers just really have to engage on that. And they now have the tools and the data to do it.
Yeah, that's great. You also, talking about, switching to talk about telematics just a little bit more. You mentioned telematics, near real-time data. There will be a QR code coming up here. Maybe some saw it in the beginning in the video, but at the end here, a QR code to participate in a survey. But can you talk about how the adoption of telematics is growing, but with more, fragmentation? There are so many different solutions. Like, what's the key for the insurance industry, insurers in particular, to kind of make all of this useful?
Yeah. So there is a lot of fragmentation. There's a lot of providers of the service. So the good news is adoption continues to grow. And commercial fleet operators, others with commercial mobility exposure, continue to adopt telematics as a way to be better informed. Earlier, you asked me about what surprised me. One of the things that surprised me is that that market has not consolidated faster than it has. I really thought it would consolidate around a few major providers. It hasn't happened. So the solution to make kind of all these data from different sources that have different formats and different levels of fidelity, to make it useful, you have to aggregate it, you have to normalize it, you have to kind of get a consistency to it. So that is one of the things at Samba Safety we spend a lot of energy on. Is we work with over 100 providers in this area, and to kind of ingest all that data and normalize it and present it in a format that's usable and digestible for other organizations, be they the operators themselves or the insurance company trying to gain insights on their portfolio or on a policy basis. That's an important task, and it's not an easy task. But if you're going to get the benefit of the data, you need to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I love that goes back really to Samba's mission, that Samba is a mission-focused organization, right? It's not just about being another person or another organization in the fold. It's really about, you would think I would work there. I'm working there with the plugs I'm giving. But for real, right? It's an important tool for those of us in the industry, the insurance industry, insurance company, brokers, and not just those doing the risk assessment and the training and deciding how to put their operators on the road.
Right. And I think the way we think of it is you need to provide solutions. You need to provide things that are actionable and lead to better outcomes. And telematics is just one space where we're trying to do that, and I think we are doing that. But again, it requires a lot of collaboration between the operator, their insurance company, their broker, and the data provider to develop those solutions.
So if I asked this question, is there more to provide? I mean, as way of examples, the survey I mentioned will allow Samba to produce the 2025 telematics report. The 2024 is out there. In that report, it mentions training as a force multiplier.
Yes.
Force multiplier. So how does the telematics and training, impact the real world? Are there more examples that you could give us, or how does that all come together?
Well, and this is what we talked about a little bit earlier, talking about your children and you monitoring the cell phone. Again, the monitoring in itself can bring about a change in behavior. We've seen that, in our efficacy studies that we've done. We've seen just monitoring. Organizations that actively monitor their drivers see a measurable reduction in the number of violations. We know violations correlate to losses. And as I said, in this year's risk report, we actually see that those losses, the severity of those losses is being reduced as well. When you add training, the effect is like 2.5 to 3 times reduction in violations. So you have data, those data are actionable, but if you don't take the action, you're not going to get the full benefit. And what we've seen is a 77% reduction in going forward violations for companies that monitor and then follow up with training based on what they're seeing. That's a huge reduction.
Insights become impact. So then why do you think there's still so much hesitancy between fleets and insurers when that benefit is so obvious? I mean, we're not talking little numbers, we're talking big numbers.
Yeah. I think there's a few things that work. One, the good news is there's a lot more data. The challenging news is there's a lot more data. And, to kind of ingest it and use it, it can be overwhelming, especially when you throw in telematics, which just produces millions of data points.
Yeah.
So that's part of the problem. In terms of cooperation between the operators and the insurance companies, some of that, frankly, may be a little bit more myth than fact. In one of our earlier surveys, we asked if operators were sharing their data with insurance carriers, and if they weren't, why they weren't, and 74% of them said, "Well, they never asked us for it." You know? So there's that, but also there's probably a trust issue, right? It's like, if I share these data with you, what are you going to do with it? And is that potentially going to be a detriment to my operation? So that's the critical point. And we if we're going to get that kind of cooperation and collaboration, we need to have a fully transparent discussion. Why are the data valuable? How can we use them? How do we all benefit from the application of the data? And that's where I think insurance brokers play a critical role, right? They have the trust relationship oftentimes with the policyholder. They're the ones that can articulate the value of what the data can bring, and they can facilitate the solution being implemented.
I love that, because it really kind of underscores that value of the broker, right? We're always looking for, why that relationship is important in the insurance ecosystem. And I know sometimes that is challenged, especially in this age of, AI and increased technology, but the broker really plays such a critical role, not only in this space, but in all those insurance lines. And that's how you show value to your clients and the next client that may come along.
Absolutely. And you talk about AI and things like that, and just talking about what we're discussing, kind of more data rich decision making, that should actually remove some of the burden of what brokers have to do today in trying to kind of present the risk and sell the risk and all that other stuff, and allow them to focus more time on solutioning and how to improve performance, and really kind of demonstrating visible value creation for the client. So I don't see technology or AI or more data being a detriment to the broker at all. I think it's going to assist them in their role.
Well, and those brokers, their insurance company partners, the risk managers and such, I mean, those are the individuals that we're looking to fill out the survey coming up here, the one they can access with the QR code. Even if they're not watching live, it's still going to be there. And that, that's the first step, I think, in sharing information that will be useful. And certainly that report will be made available to them earlier than the general public, should they choose to participate, I think is the way that works. But
that's the way they do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great benefit for what? Answering some questions that will help the greater cause here.
Yeah. I think anyone involved, we're talking about the telematics survey, anyone involved with telematics would benefit from the survey. And, the more robust the survey, the more participation, the better. And this year, in addition to brokers and insurers and operators, we're adding the telematics providers. So we work with over 100 of those, so we will have them weighing in as well. So I think it's going to be a really information-rich report this year.
Just another step to the holistic approach from Samba. Now, if anyone is watching this, we're doing this live, but certainly the recording of it will be posted on many platforms. So, maybe you're watching this in the future and you didn't get a chance to fill out the survey. Samba does do one every year, so certainly be on the lookout for that. You can see it if you're a member of the Risk and Insurance Education Alliance. You get our newsletters and emails. We will be partnering to make sure that we send it out every year. But head to the website too and find the latest telematics report, find the latest driver safety report. Different reports come out throughout the year, and just because you're not listening to this in the time that we may need you to fill out the survey, although if you're live, we do need you to go do that. It's important to engage that way.
I agree. Thank you, Noel.
Yeah. So, okay. So for organizations still on the fence about investing in monitor and training, if they've gotten this far, in this session, I sure hope that they're not. But what's the best argument to get them off the sidelines?
Well, without kind of going to fear tactics,
let's try it.
I think it's going to become imperative. and I mentioned before, this line of business, commercial auto insurance, and I'll answer from the perspective of the insurance carrier, has been, distressed for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But you are seeing the companies that are having success are the ones that are making these investments, so I think it's for them. It's just a business imperative to get serious about this. And for the commercial operators, the same is true. It's hard. I understand it's hard right now to make different kinds of They have a lot of other investments that are competing with this.
Yeah.
But the return in terms of improved safety performance, lower costs of doing business, and really important is the human factor here. Being able to attract and retain drivers when we're dealing with an aging driver population and a driver shortage, that is a critical factor for business success. And what we know is younger drivers value employers, companies that are investing in them and investing in their safety and well-being. Sure. So I think for the operators, it is also a strategic imperative. It's hard to find the dollars sometimes, but this one, I really believe, has a really strong return on investment.
Yeah, invest some dollars to save a lot of dollars for sure. Yeah. So we touched on a lot today. We touched on the 2025 driver risk report, the upcoming survey and telematics report. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience, or do we want to go right to the fear mongering?
Well, like I said, 39 years in the property casualty business. It's a very competitive market. It's a very efficient market. So yeah, I guess I always have that perspective of if you're not changing, if you're not improving, you're falling behind. So I didn't mean to be a fear monger, but
no, I do it with my kids, John. We have an insurance focused family here now, our generation. So we do like to go through the things that our children experience that insurance has helped impact and made safer, like seatbelts, right? And things along. Every time the insurance industry goes to do something that helps people, right, it makes us all safer, and that's, in my opinion, not talked about enough. As a society,
and take insurance out of it. Just reducing accidents, making our roads safer. It's the right thing to do. And that, we started with kind of my background and how I found my way to Samba safety. It was truly fortuitous that I could take my experience in one industry and lend it to another industry that's really all about just making people safer.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we're going to make sure that QR code goes up again when we wrap up here, and we'll make sure we get out the links and all, but definitely visit Samba's website, visit Risk and Insurance Education Alliance for more information. And certainly if you haven't already, created a profile with the Alliance, you would be getting this information via email as well. Follow us on all of our social media, whatever is your favorite. I'm sure we're there. John, I really appreciate you joining us for another session. Should we check our calendars live for the same session next year, or we'll just connect separately?
Where to find the
audience with that. But I do, thanks to everyone for joining this episode of Alliance Insight. And again, for more information, check out the QR code or either of our websites or social media.
Take the survey. Yeah.
Take the survey. Yes. We're counting on you. All right. Thanks, John.
All right. Thank you, Noel.